Hello? Hope everybody's having a good October so far. This week I'm showing once again that this is apparently the year I'm doing all things Roger Corman based. This week we go back to the 1950s where the horror and sci-fi genres were just booming with new life. Roger Corman, who had just made the 1956 western Gunslinger, that film's writer and his frequent collaborator Charles B. Griffith suggested that they make a sci-fi film. Corman agreed, and after brainstorming multiple ideas that Griffith personally feels became a mess, they made Not of This Earth in 1957.
From outer space he came to destroy the people of this planet, leaving in his path of doom a trail of terror.
Now This Earth has become a pretty popular cult classic among Roger Corman and sci-fi horror fans. Pretty hard to find for many years unless you knew the right bootleggers on eBay. The film got a release on DVD around 2010 or 11 through Shout Factory on a triple DVD set along with Attack of the Crab Monsters as well as War of the Satellites. But because it's fallen into the public domain due to the filmmakers neglecting to put a proper copyright on the film, multiple uploads of the film have been made to YouTube, making it pretty easy to watch in its full length.
It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, look, there's almost no production costs. You can't take your eyes off it. Where do they get actors who can do this?
The plot of Not of This Earth, while full of many horror and sci-fi cliches, especially by today's standards, is pretty creative for its time and I actually think holds up pretty well.
It is adequate.
Our main character slash antagonist is Mr. Johnson, played by Paul Birch, an alien from a planet named Davana, whose people are dying from radiation poisoning and need new blood to survive. Johnson walks around using alien powers to kill people, steal their blood, and send it back to Davana, all the while visiting a local doctor named Rochelle, played by William Roerick, to get a better understanding of his blood and hopefully find a cure for his people.
Speak of the Earth creatures.
They are second stage, subhuman, weak and full of fright.
Speak of their blood.
It may be as ours. I have sent to you 30 cubits for study.
There must be more.
After visiting Rochelle, Johnson hires a hospital nurse named Nadine Story, played by Beverly Garland, to be his full-time caregiver. And while staying with the very bizarre Mr. Johnson, Nadine sees and hears many suspicious things.
Mr. Johnson, you locked my door.
I did, yes.
Why?
You do not wish it?
If my door's going to be locked, I'd like to do my own locking.
In the place from which I come, no person would dare sleep in insecure quarters.
Just where do you come from?
I believe your expression was good night, Miss Story.
And with Mr. Johnson's chauffeur, Jeremy, played by Jonathan Hayes, and her cop boyfriend, Harry, played by Morgan Jones, she investigates, hoping to find the truth. Meanwhile, Johnson continues to gather more blood, more victims, and soon sets his sights on Miss Story.
There is no place for you to hide. You may conceal your person, but I can find your mind.
I know, it sounds pretty fucking dumb, and there have been multiple jokes about how the film could pretty much be called Space Vampires.
This killer is a fiend of the most diabolical kind. Interested in only one thing, blood.
But the film is really well made. It is genuinely creepy, the pacing is really good, it's got a few humorous moments.
You get a free fifth of French cognac when you leave.
I'm with you. Meeting hours. Hell no, I'm drunk.
The film does have a few flaws, obviously. The editing between a few shots is a bit off. There is a few ridiculous moments.
No test, transfusion.
Well, don't tell me a big man like you is afraid of a little needle.
I have no fear. I came for a transfusion of blood.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but you have to have a blood test. We don't hand out blood like gasoline, you know. We have to find out whether you need ethyl or regular.
but for the most part, Now This Earth is a pretty solid film. I was really surprised by how good it was. It was gripping, chilling, it was suspenseful, and I actually cared about a good chunk of the characters here.
I saw the boss in there this morning and he acted like nothing happened.
Or maybe nothing did.
I figure it's my business to think the same thing. Sometimes I get the creeps.
Yeah. So do I.
Paul Birch gave a really fucking good performance as Mr. Johnson. The way he looks, the way he talks, while a little corny in some moments, can come off as pretty unsettling.
I did not pay you to spy on me. Should you do so again, I shall eliminate you.
Unfortunately, Birch didn't like working on the film. According to Beverly Garland, he pretty much thought that the film and its genre was beneath him.
You know how you handle an actor? They whine about anything. You pull down their pants and you spank their ass.
And after a physical confrontation with Roger Corman, he walked off the set, requiring an uncredited Lyle Littell to fill in for a few shots.
That's all I need.
But for what we get of Paul Birch, he is just on fire as this murderous, blood-stealing alien.
Let me have 5 minutes of your time in your own cellar.
In my cellar.
That's right. Come right in, young man.
I shall be glad to see your machine in operation.
Crazy.
He's dead.
And briefly going back to the Phantasm series, you can't help but wonder, did Mr. Johnson serve at all as an influence for the Tall Man? I mean, he's a cold, stiff, almost emotionless man who turns out to be an alien. He has powers, he can manipulate people, things around him, and he kills and uses humans for his own planet's benefit.
What is this thing?
I don't think I want to know. Whatever it is, no one on this world ever made it.
You mean the boss is some kind of man from Mars?
And this is the door to their planet.
Just makes you wonder. The opening scene is a good mood setter for the film.
Later.
Admittedly, the first minute is pretty cringy, showing two teenagers making out in a car and speaking dialogue that is really painful.
I think it's time I cut out now.
Don't be a drag. You know how you flip me.
I'm hip.
Essentially, this opening scene is the cliched horror movie opening that everybody criticizes a bad horror movie for.
So?
So leave me here. If my father dug this scene, he'd put small round holes in your head.
Well, I guess it is pretty late.
And the dialogue just reeks of a grown man trying to write for teenagers without understanding at all how kids talk and act.
Good night, Pops. You're a gas.
And you're a doll.
Although, to be fair, I'm old enough now that even I don't know how teenagers talk anymore.
We are so old.
Yeah.
But the really bad hack opening is made up for immediately when the girl falls victim to Mr. Johnson.
What are you doing?
And we get our first cool shot of his soul-crushing eyes.
I think I just loaded my pants.
The scene where Mr. Johnson goes to Dr. Rochelle for a transfusion, all the while refusing a blood test, is a good way to set up just what a weird character he is.
Why don't you want a blood test?
I choose not to reveal a reason.
Well, then I suggest you try another doctor.
You have no blood here?
Yes, we have blood.
And while not alert the authorities strange, definitely unsettles those around him.
Observe.
No bleeding.
It will bleed in some moments, but then thinly and sporadically.
After being told there's no way he can help unless tests are made, Johnson uses his powers to make sure that while Rochelle will know his secret, he cannot share it with anybody.
You may study it in all the ways of your kind, and you may learn, but you may not speak. You cannot transmit to any other being your knowledge of my tragedy.
And while getting the transfusion, he talks with the nurse, Nadine Story.
Do you feel an awakening? My name is Story.
Nope, nothing like that, Story.
I would like you to work for me,
Oh, you would. Doing what?
seeing to it that I do not expire,
Mr. Johnson, no one in this wide world can guarantee life.
nor in any other, I fear.
No, I suppose not.
Nadine is played by Beverly Garland, who many might know as Barbara Harper Douglas on My Three Sons, as well as being the star of the 1950s police show Decoy, the first police show to have a female lead. Gives a wonderful performance here. She is very talented, very likable, and very beautiful.
You may increase the flow of blood this time, Story.
Mr. Johnson, for a man who didn't know he had to have a blood test before a transfusion, you seem to know an awful lot about medicine now.
I have done some reading.
The last 3 days?
After a funny exchange with her cop boyfriend Harry over Mr. Johnson's choice of parking,
How do you plan to explain away a no parking sign, a fire plug, a red zone, and the wrong side of the street? I think this man's won himself a ticket.
we cut to Johnson's home, where we're introduced to his chauffeur, butler, houseboy, Jeremy, played by Jonathan Hayes.
I want you to prepare a room.
You having company? Which bedroom's she gonna sleep in?
Open the room in the south wing.
Who many might know as the original Seymour Krelborn from Corman's later horror comedy, The Little Shop of Horrors. Jeremy is equally suspicious, but all he really cares about is getting money. And after Johnson contacts his homeworld of Davana in a scene that is pretty much the exposition dump of the film, but still pretty cool with its not bad effects put in, minus the sliding door.
Perhaps the blood of this planet shall answer.
Your mission upon this globe is to be accomplished in 5 out of 6 phases. In the first, you will study all characteristics of the Earth's subhumans.
This film, while made on a reasonable budget for a 1950s B-movie, has a bit of the feel and charm of, say, a bunch of friends who just got together and shot a film in one of their homes. Nadine and Jeremy have many scenes together throughout the film, and they mostly consist of Jeremy making pretty pervy and, as the film goes on, pretty creepy moves on her. Which leads to a, admittedly, pretty funny moment where she just slaps the shit out of him.
Well, I think we live in overstimulated times.
Although as the film goes on and they continue to see more of Johnson's questionable and weird behavior, they start to work together to find out what is going on. Johnson's ever-growing body count throughout the film consists of Joe Piper, a vacuum cleaner salesman, played by Roger Corman's probably longest collaborator, the late great Dick Miller.
You wish that I purchase your machine. I don't want you to purchase, mister. I just want to give you a free demonstration. You want to purchase, you purchase. You don't want to purchase, you don't purchase. I ain't going to force you to purchase. This, as they say in the vernacular, is the darling of the vacuum cleaning world.
Leave my house.
Shit. Give me a chance, will you? It's just a demonstration. You see this little baby at work in your own cellar, you turn flip-flops.
No flip-flops.
No flip-flops.
In a role that Miller apparently almost completely ad-libbed.
It's a very simple operation.
We then see Johnson encounter 3 bums and lures them to his home with the promise of booze.
Who are those gentlemen?
Those aren't gentlemen, those are bums.
Because, hey, if you're gonna murder people, might as well be the homeless alcoholics.
He's a jolly good fellow.
They're dead drunk. Thanks. I needed that.
And probably the most random part of the film, he encounters a Asian man.
Ganto Laila. Laila.
And sends him back to Davana to be used as a live test subject. It's random because this is the only non-Caucasian character in the film, and while there isn't anything overtly racist or offensive with this character while he's on screen, you get the feeling that they only include this character so that Jeremy could say this line later.
The boss second stories it in about 2 o'clock in the morning, and he has a Chinaman with him. Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? The Chinaman is not the issue here, dude.
He takes the Chinaman into his room, and neither one of them comes out.
Also, dude, Chinaman is not the preferred nomenclature. Asian American, please.
The only time we get a really bad scene with Nadine is when she goes snooping in Mr. Johnson's basement, where he keeps his blood as well as disposes of dead bodies, and she is really careless about what she touches and where she leaves it. And sure enough, Mr. Johnson finds out she was there when he spots her fucking diving cap.
I believe she was looking for this.
Yeah. Yeah, she lost it.
In the cellar, Jeremy.
Are you an idiot?
And because I just can't resist, the scene with Beverly Garland in the really ugly 1950s swimsuit, as well as the scene where Jeremy's being a creeper and watches her while she's pulling on her stockings. You may laugh, but in the 1950s, this is pretty much the equivalent of going on Pornhub.
Jeremy, I'm disappointed in you. You have such an honest face.
Really?
Pays me $300 a week, such as making sure nobody goes near the cellar, and such as changing little gold ingots he gives me into U.S. money. What do you do, kid?
It's kind of weird to see Jonathan Hayes play this type of character, because he still has that nerdy face and haircut that we know from Little Shop of Horrors, but the way he's dressed up and the scene where her cop boyfriend scrutinizes him for his past misdeeds.
Is Jeremy really a criminal?
Two-bit crook. Can't imagine what he's doing working for a man of Johnson's class.
It's like he's trying to be made up to look like a bad boy, and I don't know, it's just hard to see Jonathan Hayes as that kind of character.
Those characters have hit the bottom of the barrel. They live from one day to the next just for a shot of cheap hooch.
They're unfortunate.
Unfortunate? They're happy. Give them a little wine or a bottle of hair tonic and a tickled pink.
All of a sudden, a mysterious woman with sunglasses similar to Johnson's show up.
Why are you here?
I escaped. I came through the beam in your dwelling. I had to do it. I had to escape the mob.
She talks about how war and destruction has broken out on their homeworld and there is no hope for them. And how the, Chinaman specimen didn't make it.
He was crushed to the size of this communication.
Crushed?
The department concluded reservedly that it is impossible to transmit a human or subhuman anatomy through the beam from the earth end. The courier lived because he never left the beam.
If the conclusion is correct, you and I will be unable to return to Devana.
The Devana woman is in desperate need of blood, so Johnson takes her to the hospital where he got his transfusion, takes a jar of blood.
It's rabies, all right.
Oh boy.
Soon enough, the Devana woman bites the dust.
She's gone.
As the police investigate the various disappearances, Harry goes to check out the Devana woman and noticing the similar sunglasses she has to Johnson, contacts Nadine and tries to warn her to get out of the house, but she wants to find out the truth, so with Jeremy, she finds the beam that sends the blood back to Devana.
Well, now we've really got something.
I don't think we ought to fool with it. It might blow up.
What's that? Something here you can't get your hand through.
What is this thing?
And while in the basement, Jeremy, in a very awkwardly edited moment, finds a skull. Johnson returns home, finds out they're onto him, and after listening into a phone call between Nadine and Dr. Rochelle, where Rochelle still cannot talk about Johnson to her.
Would this cure Mr. Johnson?
I'm not speaking of Johnson.
But he fit your description.
Nadine, please.
Dr. Rochelle, does this man have some kind of a power over you? Has he threatened your life or something?
Nadine, I really must hang up.
Look, Dr. Rochelle,
The doctor is no longer in contact with the story.
Mr. Johnson.
Remain in your room.
And after a funny moment where Jeremy tries to take him out with the skull he found,
You're not gonna get me, mister!
Nadine runs up and...
I'm going to dispatch you.
I hear your voice, Mr. Johnson, but I'm not going to open my eyes!
The final 15 minutes of the film where Nadine tries to escape and resist Mr. Johnson's powers, avoid looking him in the eye, are very suspenseful, very on the edge of your seat.
Stop running. Stop running. Stop running.
And she gets pretty far, and only falls victim to Johnson when she can't run anymore.
I shall not kill you.
You shall not kill me.
The first specimen I sent to Davana was crushed. It may have been an accident. I shall send another. It shall be you.
It shall be me.
When the police show up, Johnson orders her to return to his home and get into the beam. And as she slowly walks back to the house, making you wonder, is this it for her? We see Harry chase Johnson down on his police motorcycle.
Look at me. Look at me.
And just as Nadine has her hand on the beam, ready to go, Harry sounds his police horn, and in a pretty well-established moment, we saw throughout the film that Johnson cannot stand loud noises, particularly horns and ringing.
I've ordered you not to sound the warning horn or make any high decibel noises while near me.
He's apparently very sensitive to the noise, so... Nadine is safe. We cut to some time later where apparently somebody thought it was a good idea to give this alien blood thief his own grave on an Earth cemetery. And maybe because somebody has an ironic sense of humor, they chiseled onto it, "Here lies a man who is not of this earth." And after Nadine and Harry have their final conversation where they debate whether or not they should feel sorry for him, we see a man in the distance slowly making his way to the camera.
Come on.
And that's where it ends, on a sort of cliffhanger note, and just in case anyone's wondering, there were no sequels to this film.
Bogus!
There was, however, 2 remakes, both produced by Roger Corman, the first one coming out in 1988, probably known as the first mainstream movie to star notorious ex-porn star Tracy Lords.
In the place where I am from, no person would dare sleep in insecure quarters.
Just where do you come from?
I believe your expression was, good night.
Pretty much a shot-for-shot remake, but with a few titties put in here and there, and definitely made as a more straightforward comedy.
You have no choice but to obey me. You will be the next subject I send to Davana.
Hey, Klingon!
The second remake came out in 1995, also with a little more nudity.
I do feel more life in me now. Perhaps my death will be delayed.
Mr. Johnson this time was played by Michael York, and the role of Jeremy, played before both times as a young, dumb guy in his 20s, was now played by Richard Belzer, of all people.
Can't you for once in your life just follow through something to the end?
I hate endings. I like continuing stories, mini-series, cliffhangers. Same bad time, same bad channel.
I believe your expression was good night.
Not of This Earth, while it admittedly has a few cheesy moments, is a fucking excellent sci-fi horror film. I was pleasantly surprised the first time I saw it, and I love it. Every time I watch it, it still brings a lot of enjoyment. The horror element is extremely well done, and is owed a lot to regular Roger Corman composer Ronald Stein. Cinematography goes to John J. Mescal, who is actually an Oscar-nominated cinematographer for Take a Letter, Darling from 1942. This is actually the final theatrical film he worked on, and the editing, while a little hit and miss in certain areas, is reasonably well done by Charles Gross Jr., another early regular Corman collaborator.
Ain't it cool?
A very effective scene that really stands out is where Johnson kills Dr. Rochelle using an alien creature. And well, yeah, you can feel the strong presence of the strings. The scene where the creature kills Dr. Rochelle is honestly pretty fucking disturbing. And of course, Roger Corman would continue to direct many films in the horror and sci-fi genre, and then expand throughout the 1960s before retiring from directing in the early 70s, leaving his mark on low-budget and independent filmmaking, as well as being a mentor to some of the greatest filmmakers of the past 40 years. Jack Nicholson once said that Roger Corman's problem was that every once in a while he actually made a good movie, and this is definitely one of them. I totally recommend Not of This Earth. On the 10-star scale, I give it a 7.8. On the 5-star scale, I give it a 4. Very fun film, good movie for the Halloween season, and I will see you next week where we dive into the next edition in the Halloween franchise, and... I'm definitely gonna need some booze for this one.
I don't care what he is, but I think we ought to smash this thing.
You couldn't bust through that with a 20-pound sledge.